السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على من بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين وقدوة للعاملين ومحجة للسالكين وحجة على العباد أجمعين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. إخواني في الله, we are continuing with our lecture series concerning the signs of the Day of Judgment. We are looking now at the minor signs of the Day of Judgment. Yesterday we took the first two signs. Sign number one was the coming of Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sign number two was the splitting of the moon, as mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in chapter 54 of the Quran, Surah Al-Qamar. Today we take the third minor sign from the minor signs of the Day of Judgment, and this is the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the death of the last prophet, the death of the last messenger. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says in authentic hadith to Auf bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, he says, "U'dud sittan qabla sa'ah." Count 6 things that will happen before the hour. Count 6 things that will happen before the day of Qiyamah. وَذَكَرَ أَوَّلَهَا مَوْتِي. And the very first thing he mentioned was my death. So this is one of the signs of the Day of Judgment, the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ikhwani fillah, when it came to the end of the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was very clear from his actions and his words that his time is ending. His time on this world was ending. It was very clear. Number one, year 10, he performed i'tikaf in the mosque for 20 days. He used to perform i'tikaf only for 10 days. But this year he performed for 20 days. Number two, he used to revise the Quran every Ramadan with Jibreel alayhi salam once. He revises the entire Quran with Jibreel, the portion that was revealed, once. But this Ramadan, he revised it twice. He says to his daughter Fatima, the only reason I can think of is my time is coming to an end. Number three, he said to one of his beloved companions, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, says, Ya Mu'adh, inni uhibbuk. Oh Mu'adh, I love you. I'm sending you to the people of Yemen. Oh Mu'adh, perhaps when you come back, you shall not find me. Perhaps when you come back, you shall pass by my mosque and my grave. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he starts crying. He starts crying profusely because this is the very last time he shall see the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is number three. Number four, he comes, he performs his Hajj. And you all know that this is called the farewell Hajj, Hajjatul Wada'. And he says to the Muslims, لَعَلِّي لَا أَلْقَاكُمْ بَعْدَ عَامِكُمْ هَذَا. He says every time this word, لَعَلِّي لَا أَلْقَاكُمْ بَعْدَ عَامِكُمْ هَذَا. Perhaps I shall never meet you again after this year. Take from me the manasikum al-hajj. Take from me these rulings of Islam. لَعَلِّي لَا أَلْقَاكُمْ بَعْدَ عَامِكُمْ هَذَا. Perhaps I shall never meet you again ever. Number five, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed on the day of Arafah, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, on this day I have perfected your religion and I have completed my favor upon you. I have completed my favor upon you and I have chosen for you Islam as your religion. The Prophet is being told that his favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is complete. His mission is complete. He has nothing else left in this dunya. This is to tell him that your time is expiring, O Prophet. And number 5 or number 6, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was given a surah from the Quran that is an obituary, that is a declaration that, O Prophet, you're going to pass away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Make istighfar. Your time is over. When you finish the prayer right now, what do? You said istighfar. It is the end of amal. Your deeds, your mission is over. So the Prophet ﷺ, he understood that his time is coming up. This is in Hajj, the year 10. Year 11 came, the second month, the month of Safar. The Prophet ﷺ, he goes to Uhud. He goes to the Shuhada of Uhud. Hamza, Mus'ab bin Umair, Anas bin Nadr. You know the 70 companions who passed in Uhud. And he makes dua for them. He prays for them. He asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them the greatest rewards. And he says to the Muslims, إِنِّي فَرَطٌ لَكُمْ, I am your predecessor. وَأَنَا شَهِيدٌ عَلَيْكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, and I am a witness to you on the day of judgment. وَاللَّهِ كَأَنِّي أَنظُرْ إِلَى حَوْضِ الْآنِ, Wallahi, it is as if I can see my pond in Jannah, in the plains of Qiyamah. Wallahi, it is as if I can see my pond. A few days later, he goes to Baqi' and he makes dua for the Muslims who passed away, the Sahaba in Baqi', and he says, وَإِنَّ بِكُمْ لَاحِقُونَ, we shall be coming to you very soon. He says, we shall be coming to you very soon. This is the beginning of Safar, the year 11 of the Hijri calendar. Safar continues. The end of the month reaches about the 27th or so. He goes to Baqi', he prays janazah on one of his companions. Then he comes back home. He finds his wife Aisha radiallahu anha complaining of a headache. Aisha is saying, wa ra'sa, my head is paining. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam says to her, bal ya Aisha, wa ra'sa, my head is paining more severely. I have a severe fever. And they touch the forehead of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the temperature is so intense that they can feel the heat from outside the turban that Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alayhi wasallam is wearing. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he has 9 wives at the time. Khadija had passed away, and Zainab bint Khuzaymah had passed away. He had 9 wives. He used to go every single night to one of the houses. But the sickness became very severe after a while, and he was in the house of Maymuna radiallahu anha. Then he says, Ayna ana ghada, where will I be spending my night tomorrow? Where will I be spending my night tomorrow? So the wives understood. They understood that Prophet ﷺ wants to spend his night somewhere he chooses. So they say to him, "Oh Prophet, choose wherever you want to stay the night. We have given you permission as your wives." This is the Prophet asking for permission from his wives where he can spend the next night. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Let me go to the house of Aisha." He can't stand up by himself. So 2 Sahabas, Al-Fadl ibn Abbas and Ali ibn Abi Talib, they carry him. And they drag his feet from the house of Maymuna, they take him to the house of Aisha. The temperature is severe. So he's put in a bathtub, and he tells his wives, pour water, pour water. So they pour 7 skins of water, 7 leather skins of water, until he tells them enough. Then he goes to the mosque, and he gives a khutbah to the Muslims. A khutbah that is a message also for us in our times. He says to the Muslims that the previous people, they used to take the graves of the prophets and the righteous people as mosques. And I forbid you to do such a thing. Do not take the graves of the righteous people and the prophets as graves. لعنة الله على اليهود والنصارى اتخذوا قبور أنبياء مساجدا. May the curses of Allah be on the Jews and the Christians. They took the graves of their prophets as mosques. And he says, Allahumma la taj'al qabri wathanan yu'bad. Oh Allah, do not make my grave a place people will come to worship. My grave is not a mosque. Oh Allah, do not make my grave a place people will come to worship. Then he says to the Muslims, Hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he says, Inna Allah khayyara abdan ma indah wa ma inda Allah. A servant of Allah has been given a choice to choose what is with Allah and what is with this dunya. And this servant of Allah has chosen what is with Allah. So the Sahabas, they understood this was a general message. But Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, in a mosque, this fool, he starts crying profusely. And he says, فَدَيْنَاكَ بِأَبَائِنَا أُمَّهَاتِنَا. We sacrifice you, O Prophet, with our parents. May our parents, our mothers, our fathers be sacrificed for your sake, O Prophet of Allah. Muslims are wondering, why is this old man crying? And later on they understood that the servant Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam was speaking about was himself. He was given a choice by Allah to stay in this dunya or to go to Allah, and he had made his choice that he is going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only person who understood it was Abu Bakr. Prophet ﷺ looks at Abu Bakr, he says to Abu Bakr, Ya Abu Bakr, la tabki, oh Abu Bakr, do not cry. And he says to the Muslims, Inna amanna an-nasa alayya bi suhbatihi Abu Bakr. The person who I owe the most from all the Muslims is Abu Bakr. His money, his property was like my property. I take from it whatever I feel. He gave me everything, Abu Bakr. He says, وَلَوْ كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذًا خَلِيلًا مِنْ أُمَّتِي لَاتَّخَذْتُ أَبَا بَكْرٍ. If I was to choose a Khalil, a person who's a close friend, it will have been Abu Bakr. وَلَكِنْ أُخُوَّةُ الْإِسْلَامُ مَحَبَّةٌ. But for him is the brotherhood of Islam and his companionship. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen me as he chose the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam to be his Khalil. So Prophet alayhi salam became the Khalil of Allah the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen Nabiullah Ibrahim to be his Khalil. Then he says to the Muslims, whoever have wronged amongst you, this is a prophet. If you're in a leadership position, listen to the words of the Prophet. He says to the Muslims, whoever have wronged amongst you, if I have wronged amongst you, take your revenge. Take your revenge. This is the justice of Islam. Take your revenge on me. Whoever amongst you, I have their money, please claim your money right now. So one of the Sahabas, he says, oh Prophet of Allah, you have 3 silver coins of mine. He says to one of his family members, please pay him. The Muslims later on, they talk to him, he says, Wallahi, the only reason I claimed my money from the Prophet ﷺ is that I want to hold on to something that was touched by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Then he goes back to the house. This was a Wednesday. On Thursday, his disease, about 5 days before he died, a Thursday, he became very sick. Then he tells the Muslims, bring a book, I want you to write a note, I'm giving you final advice. Umar, he says, no, the Prophet is very sick. Umar is the most intelligent of this ummah. He says the Prophet ﷺ is unwell. We don't need anything. We have the book of Allah. We have the Sunnah. So they start debating. The Prophet ﷺ tells them, please get out. It is not proper for you to argue in front of your Prophet. On this day, he commanded that every religion be banned from the Arabian Peninsula apart from the Islamic religion. The only religion that the Prophet ﷺ allowed from that date henceforth was the religion of Islam. No more Judaism or Christianity or polytheism was allowed in the Arabic Peninsula by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And he commanded a number of commands. He continued his routine. He came and prayed the Salat al-Maghrib. That Thursday, he prayed Salat al-Maghrib with the Muslims. And he led them with Surah Wal-Mursalati Urfa. He goes to his house. He relaxes. He faints, alayhi salatu salam. Unconscious. When he gets up, the very first thing he asks, he says, Asalla nas, have the people prayed Salatul Isha? They said, no, O Prophet, they're waiting for you. He says, put for me some water. I perform wudu, so that I can go lead the Muslims in Salatul Isha. So they give him water for wudu. As he tries to stand up, alayhi salatu salam, he collapses, faints, unconscious. He wakes up after a while. The first question he asks, Asalla nas, have the people prayed? They say, La, they're waiting for you, O Prophet. He collapses, he faints. The third time he faints. When he sees he's not able to lead prayer, he tells his wives, Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Command Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu to lead the Muslims in prayer. Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, she interjects. She says, Abu Bakr is a weak man. He's emotional in prayer. He cries a lot. Command Umar. Umar is stronger. Prophet ﷺ says to them, Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Command Abu Bakr, he leads the prayer. The wives interject once, twice, thrice. The Prophet ﷺ, he says to them, Inna kunna kasawahib Yusuf. You are like the women in Surah Al-Yusuf. Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Command Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. So Abu Bakr, he leads the Muslims and Isha prayer from Thursday. And he leads a total of 17 prayers until the Prophet ﷺ passes away. So that entire Friday, Abu Bakr is leading prayer. Saturday Fajr, he's also leading prayer. Saturday Dhuhr comes. The Prophet ﷺ feels a little bit stronger. He says to Al-Fadl and Ali, come hold me, we go to the mosque together. So they carry the Prophet ﷺ. They come to the mosque. Abu Bakr is leading the Muslims in prayer. Abu Bakr, he feels the presence of the Prophet ﷺ coming, so he wants to go back. Prophet ﷺ tells to him, stay in your place. So the Prophet ﷺ comes to the front, he sits down and he leads the prayer. Abu Bakr is following the prayer of Prophet ﷺ. The Muslims are following the prayer of Abu Bakr. It was like there are two Imams on that day, so as to say. The Prophet leading Abu Bakr leading the Muslims. So Prophet ﷺ, on this day, he prayed the Dhuhr prayer. He goes back to his house. Sunday came. He's not attending any prayer. This was only prayer he prayed on Saturday. Sunday came. He freed all his slaves. The little money he had, 7 dinar, he gave out in sadaqah. This was Sunday. Then Monday came. The 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, the year 11 of the Hijri calendar. The 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, the day people celebrate Mawlid, is actually not the day the Prophet was born, but it is actually the day he died. He died on the Monday, 12th Rabi'ul Awwal. This Monday, Fajr time, the house is connected to the mosque. So he opens his curtains and he sees a beautiful image. He sees the Imam of the Muslims, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, leading the Muslims in prayer. And he smiles, alayhi salatu salam. He laughs profusely. He is very happy. And he closes his curtain and he continues with the ibadah. Later on during this day, he calls for his daughter Fatima, radiallahu anha, one of the greats of women of all history. One of the 4 greatest women of all history is the daughter of Prophet Muhammed sallallahu Fatima. So Fatima comes on that day. The Prophet ﷺ whispers something to her ears and she starts crying. She starts crying. Then he whispers something to her ears. She starts laughing. Aisha radiallahu anha was shocked. She says, Wallahi, I used to think Fatima was the most intelligent of women until I saw this weird thing she did on this day. Crying, then laughing. What is this action? Later on, she asked Fatima, what happened? Says, I came to the Prophet ﷺ. I kissed his forehead as I used to do. And he whispered on my ear that I am going to die because of this disease. I, as Prophet Muhammad, am going to die because of this disease. And that made me cry. A short while later, he whispered to me that I, Fatima, am the first one from his family that shall join him in Jannah. That shall join him in Firdaus. And that made me glad, happy that I shall be seeing my father very soon. Then the pain of death started coming to the Prophet ﷺ. And Fatima, she's crying. She says, Wa karba ya abata, what pain are you going through, O my father? What pain are you going through, O my father? The Prophet ﷺ says to Fatima, Ya Fatima, laysa ala abiki karbatun ba'da al-yawm. Laysa ala abik karban ba'da al-yawm. There is no pain your father will go through after today. No pain. Calls for his grandchildren Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein. And he kisses his grandchildren and he hugs them and he bears them farewell, tells them goodbye. Then he calls Ali ibn Abi Talib and he says to him, the advice I want you to give the Muslims, tell the Muslims, as-salah, as-salah, wa ma malakat aymanukum. The prayer, look after your salah and be good to your servants, be good to your slaves. This was the very last advice from Prophet ﷺ regarding your prayer, which is your relationship between you and Allah Azza wa Jal, and how you treat those servants in your houses, how you treat those slaves, your relationship between you and your fellow human beings. So he advises you between your relationship with Allah, your prayer, your relationship with your fellow human beings, be good to those servants. Then he calls his wives and he gives them advice. Then the sakaratul maut became more severe on Prophet ﷺ. And he says, La ilaha illallah, inna lil mawti la sakarat. La ilaha illallah, inna lil mawti la sakarat. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And death indeed has a lot of pain. Death indeed has a lot of pain. Oh Aisha, I feel the effects of the poison that I got in Khaybar. I'm feeling the effects right now. Then the brother of Aisha radiallahu anha, she comes to the chambers of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, and he has a siwak, he's brushing his teeth. The Prophet alayhi salatu salam is completely weak. The pangs and the pain of death that is coming to him is made him very weak. He just stares at the siwak. Aisha radiallahu anha understands. So he tells the brother, give me the siwak, and takes the opposite side and she chews it, makes it soft with her saliva. She says, from the greatest ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon me is that the Prophet alayhi salatu salam died on my chest. And he died while my saliva had mixed with his saliva. So she takes the siwak and he brushes his teeth. This is something amazing, subhanallah. Even the scholars of fiqh have not mentioned this. They tell you to brush your prayer before wudu, before salah, عند كل وضوء عند كل salah, when you enter in the house. There are many sunnahs. From the sunnahs of brushing your teeth is when you're going to meet Allah Azza wa Jal. When death is coming upon you, he's brushing his teeth. So he comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with teeth that have been brushed. So he brushes his teeth, alayhi salatu wasalam, and the pain of death becomes more severe. And he says, مع الذين أنعمت عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. He says, oh Allah, I want to be with the salihin, I want to be with the shuhada, with the anbiya, and those are the best of companions. Allahumma ar-rafiq al-a'la, Allahumma ar-rafiq al-a'la. Oh Allah, grant me the highest companion, grant me your companionship. On this day, at the time of duha, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he breathed his last and he died. And this is from the minor of Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Mata Rasulullah, mata Habibullah, mata khayru khalqillah, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Fatima radiallahu anha, she screamed and she said in tears the following heartbreaking words. She says, Ya abatah, ajaba rabban da'ah, يا أبتاه إلى جنة الفردوس مأواه يا أبتاه إلى جبريل ندعاه. Oh Allah, we announce to you the death of Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We announce to you that Prophet is coming to Jannah al-Firdaus, is his destination. We announce to you, Jibril, that Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is no more. She asked the Muslims later on, أطابت أنفسكم أن تحثوا على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم التراب. How did you get the satisfaction of covering the grave of Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام with soil? How are you able to do such a thing? Anas radiallahu anhu, the companion of Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he says, Wallahi, the greatest day, the brightest day for the people of Medina is the day Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to the city of Medina. That is the brightest day, and the day he passed away. ما أظلمه وما أقبحه من يوم الذي توفي فيه عليه الصلاة والسلام. The darkest day, the ugliest day of all is the day the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام passed away. Everyone in Medina was in tears when they heard the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام was no more. Umar ibn al-Khattab. Do you know who's Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu? Amir al-Mu'mineen. One of the strongest of this ummah. If the shaitan sees Umar walking this way, the shaitan takes a different way. He does not mix the shaitan and Umar. This is one of the greatest people of Islam. He said, Yes, inna rijala min al-munafiqeen yaz'umuna anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qad mat. There are men from the munafiqeen, from the hypocrites of Medina. Salam has passed. Wallahi ma mat. Wallahi he has not died. He has gone to meet Allah for 40 days as Musa ibn Imran went to Allah. Wallahi he is going to come back and is going to cut the legs and the hands of this munafiqeen. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was not present at the time. He was in another house in a place called Sulh. He comes when he hears the news that the Prophet ﷺ is no more. He enters the room, the chambers of Aisha, and he confirms the Prophet ﷺ has passed away. He takes the cover and he kisses Prophet ﷺ on his forehead. And he says, "Tibta hayyan wa mayyitan." You smell very nice, you are very good when you are alive and also when you died. And he cries. And he goes to the mosque. And he finds people gathering around Umar. And Umar is saying, "I have heard the munafiqeen claiming Prophet Muhammad has died. Wallahi, he has not died." People are gathering. He says to Umar, "Umar, ijlis. Umar, sit down." Umar is not able to sit. So Abu Bakr, he comes, he ascends the minbar. He comes, he climbs the minbar. And he says, "Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah." He makes praise to Allah. And he sends greetings and salam to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Then he says the following words that are written in gold ink in history. He says to the Muslims who are all gathered, they've left Umar, "Abudu Muhammada, فإن محمدا قد مات. ومن كان منكم يعبد الله فإن الله حي لا يموت وما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل أفإن مات أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه فلن يضر الله شيئا." He says, who amongst you worshipping Muhammad? But whoever amongst you was worshipping Allah, know that Allah is ever. And he recited the following verses. He says, Muhammad is but a messenger. If he was to die or he was to be killed, are you going to go back and apostate and leave Islam? Whoever amongst you apostates or leaves Islam, فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا, they shall not harm Allah in the least bit. The Sahaba, they said, Ibn Abbas, he says, كَأَنِّ هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ لَمْ أُنزِلَتْ هَذِهِ السَّاعَةِ. It was as if this verse was revealed for the very first time. We had forgotten such a verse is in the Quran. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he heard these words, he sunk, he fell on his feet, and he know that Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had left us. So the Muslims were crying, but a crisis happened amongst the Muslims. They said Prophet Muhammad has died. The Arabs, they left Islam, many of them. They apostated. So there's a big crisis. The Muslims had to solve it. Who is going to be the leader of the Muslims? So the entire Monday and most of Tuesday was spent discussing who's going to be the next leader. Is he going to be from Ansar? Is he going to be from Muhajirin? If he's from the Ansar, who is it? Is he from the Muhajirin? They spent the whole of Monday and Tuesday discussing this. Then came Tuesday night, which is Islamically considered Wednesday, and they washed the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. They shrouded him and they buried him at the exact spot that he died. For Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu had heard Prophet Muhammad said that prophets are buried in the place that they die. Abu Atahiyya rahimahullah, he says beautiful lines of poetry. This is a man known as the Islamic poet. Abu Atahiyya, he says, اصبر لكل مصيبة وتجلدي واعلم بأن المرء غير مخلدي وإذا أتتك مصيبة تشجى بها فاذكر مصابك بالنبي محمد. If any musibah comes to you, O fellow brother, O fellow sister in Islam, remember the greatest musibah, the greatest calamity to befall the Muslims is the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I told you this story before of the year 3, the 17th of Shawwal was the Battle of Uhud. The Prophet alayhi salam, people had claimed, Prophet Muhammad has died, Prophet Muhammad has died. There was rumors going around. She comes, asks the Muslims, what has happened to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? They say to her, Mata zawjuk, your husband has died. She said, what has happened to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? They say to her, Mata zawjuk, Mata abuk, you've lost your husband, also you've lost your father. She says to them, Fa'ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she's not even bothering her, husband dead. Your brother's died. She says, Ma fa'ala Rasulullah, what has happened to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They say to her, Huwa khayran kama tuhibbin. He is in a good state like you love him to be. She says to them, Urinihi anzur ilayhi. Show me, I see Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This year 3 of the Hijri calendar. They point, that is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She comes to the Prophet ﷺ and looks, and she's happy. She's content. She's lost her father, no worry. She's lost her husband, no worry. She's lost her brother, no worry. But the Prophet Muhammed ﷺ is present. And she says, كُلُّ مُصِيبَةٍ بَعْدَكَ جَلَلٍ. Every calamity that befalls us in regards to your calamity is nothing. So, Ikhwani fillah, this is the third minor sign of the Day of Judgment that we're taking, the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the next lecture tomorrow, inshallah, will be a shorter lecture, we shall be looking at the next sign. The Muslims conquered a city. Which city is this that is considered conquering it a minor sign? And there's a calamity that also befell the Muslims. We shall look at this sign number 4 and now sign number 5 tomorrow. Wallahu alam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.